The significance of this threshold requirement for impairment of functionality carries with it a significant consequence. If a cyber operation conducted by a state or non-state actor does not rise to the threshold level of constituting an attack, then the myriad of rules and standards that seek to minimise civilian loss don't apply, at least as a matter of IHL. Does this constitute a potential worrying gap? The answer to that question is potentially yes, but it is instructive to listen to Professor Schmidt as he discusses the issue of causality and foreseeable damage that was debated during the Tallinn Manual process to understand that the law can apply in situations that most of us would consider obvious to condition such attacks to reduce civilian harm.
This whole discussion of attack had some very important consequences. One of the consequences is, at least in our view, if a cyber operation doesn't qualify as an attack, as a matter of law, if it doesn't at least meet the functionality test, then what that means is that the civilian object involved or the civilian involved doesn't enjoy IHL protection unless there's what we call special protection. So there's special protection for humanitarian assistance activities. There's special protection for civil defense. There's special protection for medical. There's special protection for religious. But unless the activity doesn't benefit from one of these special protections under IHL, humanitarian law, then what that means is you can target it. It means it's a valid target. We need to be careful. It's a valid target subject to the rules of proportionality and the requirement that you take precautions in attack to minimize the effect on the civilian population. Now, this raises a very, very important, so this causes people to be nervous, and so they should be. And in fact, I believe this law will change. I've written about this several times, that this is not an answer that is entirely responsive to the object and purpose of humanitarian law. So I anticipate change in this area of law. I would hasten to add, it's not as bad as it seems when you hear about it the first time, because what the international group of experts agreed was that when you're assessing whether something's an attack, you must assess the consequences not only on the target system, the thing you're shooting at through cyberspace, but anything else that's affected in a way that would qualify it as an attack. So the classic example is I conduct an attack against an electrical grid, which is a very lucrative target in warfare. You often want to affect the electrical grid. I attack the electrical grid, and as a result of that, it has consequences that actually are physical in nature. Many people always use the incubator example where the incubator is shut down in the hospital, the children die as a result. If that's foreseeable, you must consider that, and that will qualify the operation as an attack subject to the prohibition. And the incubator one is the one that's most often used, but the one that's perhaps most likely is electricity or power. Because we're in Newport, Rhode Island right now, we're in the midst of a cold spell, it's February, it's very cold. If you lose power in Rhode Island today, it's predictable people will die. The elderly will die, the sick will die because it will be too cold. So you must assess all of those consequences when you're trying to determine whether or not something is an attack that is subject to the prohibitions on attacking civilian objects, attacking civilians, and so forth.